I was surrounded by for so many years and what I was a part of is people looking at Hef like he was just this amazing person with no flaws. And that's not true.
Holly, this series is absolutely fascinating. I watched the episode about Jasmine, but what made you want to tell these stories in the Playboy murders?
When I was approached about doing this show, I was given a deck with a description of all the cases in it. And I was really compelled by it because not only are these extremely interesting cases, and all 6 are very different, but I had never even heard of most of these cases. And I thought I knew everything about Playboy history and everything that happened to every Playmate, but I'd never heard of these. So I was extremely intrigued, and I knew this was the type of show that I would want to watch whether or not I was involved. So it was a definite yes for me.
Yeah. Is there one story in particular that really hits you more than the others?
I mean, honestly, there's more than one that hits me pretty hard. The very first one that you watched with Jasmine Fiore, that one really hits home. This was a woman who was in an abusive relationship, and she was coming from modeling for Playboy. So she's somebody that I can relate to. And she was just attacked in such a horrific way. But also there's other stories, like there's a story of a Playmate who was on track to become Playmate of the Year, and she was working for Playboy talking to fans through a 1-900 number, which I didn't even know Playboy ever had a 1-900 number. But through that number, an obsessed fan was able to find out where she was and ended up murdering her husband. And it's just stories like these that just, touch my heart. They're so crazy.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, people think the Playboy lifestyle is, obviously so glamorous, but does this prove that it's also a dangerous, or it was a dangerous place as well, or maybe still is?
Well, it can be. It's just there's so many people who have modeled for Playboy over the years. And I think for so many years, all anybody ever saw were the type of things that you saw on The Girls Next Door, where it was just like us jumping on trampolines and going down slip and slides and fun things like that. But, the world of Playboy also involves real human beings, and there's so many women with so many different stories. And just because you're involved in like a glamorous world, it doesn't make you immune to these kind of things. I think what I really want viewers to walk away from with this series is that these were real people just like you and me, and these kind of things could happen to anybody. So if there's anything we can learn from any of these cases as far as keeping anybody safe, it would be amazing.
Did you ever fear for your safety during your time at Playboy Mansion or at Playboy events and things like that?
I didn't, because I was so under lock and key, so to speak. I was living in this gated estate with security. I had security, anytime I went out. And I think that's what a lot of women experience when they first came to pose for Playboy and were staying in the mansion guest house. But at the end of the day, they're going back to their normal lives in small towns with no security, and, if a fan tries to go after that person, they've got no protection, really.
Right. Did you ever have to deal with like overzealous fans and things like that? I mean, I'm sure, even back when Girls Next Door was on, there wasn't really like the social media like there was today. So did you ever have to deal with anything like that?
I really didn't, just because I was so protected, and I was, in a place where I was supposed to be in by 9 p.m. every night. So I was kind of on the other end of the extreme, but those kind of fans definitely exist. I mean, I got my share of letters from prison and things like that. So
yeah. I mean, how did Hef handle these situations? Or was he even like sometimes maybe not even made aware of them?
I assume he was pretty aware of all the situations, just because he was such an avid scrapbooker, and he collected every piece of media where his name was mentioned. Every day he would wake up and go down to his office at the other end of the mansion, and his secretaries would have just everything on the internet that was said about him printed out for him to read. So I'm sure he was aware of it, but with so many cases, I think, unfortunately, Playboy just decided to distance themselves. Sadly.
Yeah. When people watch this series, what are you hoping they take away from it?
I hope people are taking away the humanity of the victims. I hope we succeeded in portraying the victims as real people, as who they were, people who had people who loved them in their life, who are willing to, come on and talk about them. And I hope people walk away with a sense of empathy and just a sense of how easily this kind of thing could really happen to anybody.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know that you wrote in your book that there were so many moments when you realized that the mansion was just not for you anymore. What was that final straw for you? And did you battle with that decision for many months, maybe even years?
I did battle with that decision. There were so many times I was really close to leaving throughout the 7 years. And in the end, it happened, Hef just got really verbally abusive to me, to the point where I just couldn't stand it anymore. The other girls had left and I was the only one there, which is what I thought I had wanted for so many years. But I was also the only one on the other end of him taking out any of his frustrations, and I just couldn't deal with it anymore. I tried to stick it out a couple more months, but I just couldn't handle it and I just had to leave.
Did he try to convince you to stay?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a pattern with him. I think he does that when women are breaking up with him, but I couldn't look back. I was just done after so many years.
Yeah. You spoke out in the Playboy documentary, which I'm sure was really hard to do. And you said that, it was kind of a cult-like atmosphere, but you did receive a statement of support from Playboy. What did that mean to you? And did it mean anything to you?
Yeah, it really meant a lot. I think it's great that whoever's in charge of the company now is willing to look at everything in Playboy's past with like an open mind and see, some of it was great, but some of it wasn't. Mm-hmm. And that's the truth of the matter. I think, what I was surrounded by for so many years and what I was a part of is people looking at Hef like he was just this amazing person with no flaws. And that's not true of any human being. And, I really admire what Playboy's doing now with inclusivity. So I think that's great.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously this docuseries takes a look at crimes and, tragedies and things like that. But, in the secrets of Playboy, there were pretty intense accusations, from constant surveillance to having tapes on everyone. Should Hef have been accused of crimes? And, are you surprised that more legal action wasn't taken against him?
I mean, I'm not surprised, just because I think the decades where the craziest things were going on, I feel like people who are maybe at the other end of it probably just felt like they had no power or nowhere to go, or that nobody would listen. Right. So, I mean, assuming all that stuff is true, yeah, I think there's some really serious things that happened and everybody should be listened to for sure.
Definitely. I mean, is it healing for you now to speak out about your time in the mansion?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, It is very healing, but every time I talk about it, it is kind of like reawakening the trauma a little bit. So I'm kind of careful about when I talk and in what context. I talked about it recently when Bridget and I started our podcast late last year. And I talked about it in Secrets of Playboy last year as well. I didn't really want to, but I knew that so many other women were coming forward with their stories. I wanted to be supportive of that because I know what it feels like to be one person coming out with nobody supporting you.
Yeah, no, definitely.
That was important to me, but it is hard to sit there, for a full day or 2 days, in the case of Secrets of Playboy, where somebody's interviewing you about all the intimate and horrible moments of 7 years of your life. It wasn't a fun interview to do, but I felt like it was necessary.
Yeah, definitely. How do you feel about Hef now?
I mean, my feelings aren't particularly positive, but when I left the relationship, I just kind of my feelings turned off because I just had an awakening and a realization that he wasn't the person I had built up in my mind. I built up this really positive image of him. And when I couldn't fool myself anymore and real life was just showing me otherwise, I just kind of turned that off. And he was almost like a statue in my mind, or if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird.
No, I'm sure. And how long did it take for you to get back your self-confidence and feel like yourself again?
Oh my God. I mean, it took years after I left for me to get back my self-confidence. And it came in starts and stops too. When I left, I was just in survival mode, trying to build a career for myself instantly. And I was really successful with that for a while. And I was just really living through my work and my friends and going out and having fun. But as time goes on, eventually you have to address your past trauma. So then that kind of took me down a notch for a while, but now I'm kind of getting back again. So it's not like a linear ascension, unfortunately, but.
Right. Do you regret it? I mean, obviously, certain things have come your way from it, but obviously, like you said, you still suffer a lot of trauma from it, have nightmares from it. But do you have happy memories from the show? Do you regret the whole experience?
I mean, I can't really say I regret the whole experience because it was something that I wanted to do. And I think all the bad things I went through were just things I had to learn in this lifetime. So even though I would not want to go back and do them again, I think it's all part of my life journey. And I did, get a lot of positive things out of it and a lot of positive female friendships. And I had good times hanging out with the girls. So I do have those things to take away. So I can't really say I regret it, although I wouldn't want to do it again, if that makes sense.
Totally. You said you have a lot of positive female friendships that came of it, but you also said that the women were pitted against each other. Did you feel like that was because of Hef? Was that because of producers? Was it a little bit of a mix of both? And looking back, is that something that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened? And I know that you said you were gaslit throughout the relationship as well. So kind of a mix of all of that. It's got to be pretty, traumatic.
Yeah, it was definitely a mix of that. For so many years when I was living at the mansion, I always had this image of Hef being this amazing person. So any problems I blamed on the other women. I was like, oh, well, they're just awful. If they were gone, everything would be perfect. But of course it wasn't, and that wasn't the case. And over the years, and right before I left, I just realized how much he was pitting us against each other, which was really hurtful to me because I'd always approached the relationship as like trying to do the best I could. So knowing that he was like doing those kind of maneuverings behind my back was really hurtful. But yeah, it was definitely him. And even after I left the mansion, I continued to do a spinoff at E! And according to the contract I'd signed previously, I had to work with the same producers as who did Girls Next Door. And that producer would like pit us against each other. And it led to like Kendra and I not getting along. So it's a lot of manipulation. Yeah.
You mentioned Kendra. I mean, looking back and even now, do you regret how things kind of went down between the two of you? Because I guess that you still don't have any sort of relationship with her, right?
I mean, it is really unfortunate. I wish she was more open-minded to the fact that not everybody had the same experience she did at the mansion. And I went through a lot of different things and had to deal with a lot more just being the main girlfriend. And I was there for 4 years before she ever came along, where I had to deal with a lot of drama with Hef and other women and things like that. So it's unfortunate, but she has to learn what she has to learn in this lifetime. So we're all on a different path, I guess.
Would you want to have her on the podcast to kind of sit down and hash things out? And do you ever foresee that happening?
Yeah, Bridget and I always say she's totally welcome to come on the podcast if there's anything she wants to talk about or clarify. But I have heard her say in the media that she doesn't like talking about Playboy stuff and just kind of wants to move on. So I definitely respect that as well. I've been in that phase in my life before, and it's really hard because it's kind of all anybody else wants to talk about. So I definitely respect her decision, but she is welcome to come on if she ever wants to.
Yeah. Have your kids ever started asking questions about, about your Playboy past or anything like that? Or are they just still totally unaware?
Yeah, they're still really little, so they don't really know what any of that is. So that's like a future bridge to cross.
Are you scared about that conversation? Have you thought about that conversation?
I've thought about it, but I think as a parent, you just learn the day your kids are born that you never know what to expect. You can read all the parenting books you want, but you just don't know who these little people are and who they're becoming until you witness it day by day. So it's just something I'll have to address when I get there.
Yeah. And what are they turning into? What are they loving right now? Who is more like you?
My daughter really loves surfing and animals. She's just like a super caring, super active person. And my son is obsessed with pirates, and he's just like super hyper. He's a big entertainer, loves to make everybody laugh. So they're fun.
I love that so much. I always love asking moms, what is your biggest motherhood challenge at the moment?
Honestly, I have it really easy. My kids are really healthy. They have a really great hands-on dad. I have no complaints. But I think, no matter how great things are going, the challenge is always like, how can I deepen the relationships more? And how can I make the best memories I can possibly make? So that's kind of something I'm always reassessing.
Mm-hmm, definitely. It's always hard to be more present and things like that. I mean, you said you're obviously their father is very hands-on. What's your secret to co-parenting?
People ask me that all the time, and I don't have a good answer just because I'm really lucky to be co-parenting with somebody who also understands that all they want is what's best for the kids. And I think if both co-parents are approaching it from that level, you know, you can never go wrong. But unfortunately, not everybody's that lucky. Sometimes you're dealing with people who really have issues, or people who don't understand that, or people who want to use the kids as like pawns or leverage. So sadly, I don't have any advice if that's what somebody's dealing with. But, you know, luckily, I think as long as you're approaching it, you know, as far as you just want what's best for the kids, that's all you can do.
Definitely. If they wanted to go into the entertainment industry, would you encourage it, or would you support it?
I definitely wouldn't encourage it. I would try to be, if they absolutely insisted, I would just try to be as like, first of all, I'd make them wait till they're 18, but also I'd just try to be as like hands-on as I could, and like, you know, try to connect them with people in the industry I trust and things like that.
Definitely. What's next? Obviously, the Playboy Murders is coming out. You're doing your podcast. I mean, what's kind of the next step? Are you kind of getting like into the investigative, you know, true crime type of bug? Did you kind of catch that?
Yeah, I love the true crime genre. I would love to continue to do more. I just love, you know, this show, and would love to do more. And, you know, we just started the podcast late last year, and we love doing it and can't wait to do more. So I'm just really happy right now.
What's been the easiest and most challenging thing about watching back the show for the podcast?
I think the most challenging thing is having to watch the episodes where I, looking back now, realized I was portrayed badly, and just thinking about all those years where people kind of like misunderstood me or thought I was coming from a bad place. That's always like super cringe. But the best part is being able to set the record straight and being able to talk with Bridget about everything, because it's so fun to like bounce things off of her and see if she sees things the same or differently. So it's been a really rewarding experience.
Definitely. What would you say is probably the biggest misconception about you, if people, you know, were watching that show?
I think the biggest misconception is that I had no interests or responsibilities or anything, because, you know, we start out the show and they introduce Kendra as being in massage school and Bridget as studying for a PhD. And I was in real estate school at the time, but they don't mention that. Like, they don't want me to be anything but like Tef's arm candy. Yeah. So it's kind of frustrating, because I feel like the label of like just kind of like following somebody around waiting to get married has like stuck with me for a long time, and it's really not the way things were.
Yeah.
But that's the worst thing in the world.
Right. No, definitely. I mean, was that probably the most challenging thing coming off the show, was, you know, finding and having everybody, you know, look at you a little bit differently, and not just the Hef's number one girlfriend?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, coming off of Girls Next Door, I think the three of us were so branded Playboy. It was hard to get other doors to open for us that weren't kind of adjacent to that, because when you're so synonymous with one brand, especially when it's a controversial brand, other people don't necessarily want to take you on as like their new discovery or their new brand representative, because you're already so synonymous with something else. So that's definitely something you have to do a complete 180 with. Definitely.
Well, Holly, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time. Congratulations on the docuseries. It's fantastic, and it's definitely an interesting watch, and going to open up a lot of eyes for a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right. Bye. For more news, content, and exclusive interviews, make sure to hit the sub, like, and bell button down below, and visit usmagazine.com.